Welcome back, everyone. Here again for another episode of On the Perf podcast, brought to you by Atlas Gunworks. Now, shout out to you folks out there who have reached out to Atlas Gunworks and shouted us out. That helps the show quite a bit. So if you're inclined to do that, that is awesome, and we appreciate you. But today, what we're going to talk about is practice. But not just any practice, 22 practice. For as long as time has gone on in shooting, it's been the age-old, 22 is great practice. A 22 is great practice. And we're gonna dig into that, what it's for, what it's not for, ways to actually get some training value out of 22s, all things 22s. Basically what we're doing here today.
Rimfire Day.
It's Rimfire Day. How are we doing today, Riser?
We're doing good. We got our first video of somebody doing a reaction to our videos, specifically to our podcasts. I saw that pop up and I was like, "Woo, this could go either way."
Yeah, you sent it to me and I was like, because I couldn't listen to it at the time, and I was like, "Well, is he angry?"
Yeah. Not angry. He was into it, and so Bob Stone, shout out Bob, did a video on our podcast, on the Gary of the Day podcast, and took it very well. Basically went through the list of Garys that we dropped and addressed every one that he had done. And, it was pretty solid. He did a good job. And then at the end of it, dropped a Gary of the Day for us.
He came bearing Garys?
He came bearing Garys. And he dropped a Gary of the Day that is not on our list. We have a quite extensive list queued up so we can drop one per episode here, and he dropped one that's not on our list. I can't believe it wasn't on our list. I don't know how he missed this one.
I have no idea what Riser's going to say.
It is shooting with a sling on your rifle on a stage that does not require you to have a sling on your rifle.
Oh my God.
How's that not on our list?
That's a good one.
It was just teed up there waiting for us.
Bonus points if you got it Ranger banded to your your stock.
100%. So shout out, Bob. You had one that we did not have.
You.
Well played, sir. Well played. Cheers to you.
Contemporarily, we're at the Utah Law Enforcement Handgun Championship, and our friend Sean came up to me. Sean from Wyoming.
Yeah.
He came up to me at the prize table, and he's like, I listened to your Gary of the Day episode. He's like, I can't unsee it now. He's like, it totally ruined this match for me. All I do is see Gary's everywhere I go. He's like, it's so right. It's so good, but
it's I think this match specifically is pretty ripe with Garydom for sure. Without a doubt, yeah.
Yeah.
But good on him, man. I mean, dude, this match has grown so much over the last few years. It went from some cops are going to get together and shoot to there's 300 people here now.
It's 500 people.
Yeah, there's 500 people total in the match. There's 300 in the cop match and there's 200 in the not a cop match.
Yeah.
It's the biggest match in Area 1.
The 28 full squads.
Mm-hmm.
28 full squads.
Nuts. Yeah, match is sold out.
I think the last time I was here, I sponsor the match on behalf of Vortex every year. But the first time I was here, I think was 2022,
mm-hmm.
and I saw what I would expect to see, right? I haven't been able to make it for the last few years, just the way timing works out with other things, and I'm back now, and I have to say, baseline or median skill level from 2022 to now 2025.
Way up.
Oh yeah, gone way up. I would say the average shooter at this match is at least B class in USPSA, if not A.
100% agree. Yeah.
And I was on a stage that had a Texas Star today. I only saw one shooter actually struggle you would think a really green shooter would struggle, two mag reloads.
Yeah.
That was one person. Otherwise, it's there's a lot of people who are obviously not regular action shooting competitors, but man, on the whole, people know what's going on. I think we actually got our hands full tomorrow teaching this class. We're going to be teaching a level higher than I anticipated.
Yeah.
Working with these guys. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be good. I'm looking forward to it.
But 22s. So here's the deal. All right. I've heard it all a long time. Everyone always says shooting 22s is so cheap. It's such good practice. Blah blah blah. Reps, all this that, the other thing. The problem, I never loved shooting 22s. I shot a bunch of 22s when I was young, obviously, because that was what my aunt and uncle and parents would let us shoot, fairly unsupervised, like most kids.
And that's what you do. Of
rural upbringing. So I shot a lot of 22s. I won't say that I ever loved shooting 22s. It was always the best you could do for right now. Like, I would always rather shoot shotguns. I would rather shoot centerfire rifles. I would rather shoot handguns, centerfire handguns. But sometimes 22 is all you had. We were doing some varmint hunting back then. Again, this was back in the era where guns were primarily associated with hunting. And as I progressed into action shooting, people would talk about, well, 22s are such great practice. And as I got better, as I was, expert class in IDPA and getting involved in USPSA and 3-gun, the issue I always had with it, aside from it just being, I don't know, Captain Crunch cereal, like it's sweet, but it's not really candy, but it's kind of candy. There's no nutritional value. But the form factor of the guns was never right.
Yep.
Right? The guns that shoot 22 are nothing like the guns we shoot in action shooting. Even evolved to a point where I got past that. I have a replica AR-22, the M&P, the Smith & Wesson M&P 1522. When it first came out, I got one of those. I still have it. And then also got Kimber, actually. I don't know if they still make it, but for a time, they made a rimfire version of a 1911. You could get it as a conversion slide, which is probably the most popular version out there, or they made a standalone gun. I have the standalone gun. And so that's, again, the form factor is getting closer, but like to really practice reloads or stages or anything like that, the form factor, it just wasn't quite the same. The recoil wasn't quite the same, and they weren't particularly reliable.
Yeah.
So you were kind of fine. So I kind of locked my 22s away for a long time. And every 4 and 8 years, everyone freaks out about there's not going to be any ammo anymore, and nitrocellulose is going to be extremely hard to get, and blah 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 blah. So we should make a rimfire class in 3-gun and in USPSA so people can still participate because no one's going to be able to afford to shoot. This has happened
at least 4 times since I started shooting.
Yeah, well, I've been in the sport, probably about 15 years now. It's happened on that cycle pretty regularly. And we're doing it again. People are like, oh, my God, there's going to be an ammo shortage. The prices are going up. And it never really comes to fruition. Ammo has never been cheap. We've said this before. Like, I don't know anybody who has unrestricted access to ammo. I don't know anybody who thinks of it as a infinite resource. Like, I think everybody kind of has a finite resource and they value it. It's always been expensive. Even when we talk about back in the Dizay when ammo was quote unquote cheap, back then it was expensive too. And the reason people didn't buy that pallet of ammo that was at whatever cost you saw it at was because it was expensive then too. And inflation's a thing, and you don't even need to talk about that. But so it's always been out there, and I've always kind of called BS on practicing with 22s because I felt like you could get more value out of dry fire, and simulated manipulations of the guns than actually pulling the trigger on a recoil on a shot that didn't really simulate a real shot. But I've come full circle on that. but that's my starting point. Adam, where are you at on training with 22s?
Well, I have, similar upbringing in terms of shooting 22s. Like, grew up on a farm, had an old bolt action 22 with one of those scopes that has like external adjustments on it. So the scope is just a fixed thing, and the mount itself has like some springs and screws, and you twist those. And every once in a while, you'd bump it and be like,
like the Saving
that's
Private Ryan scope.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, full on. So And then we had a lever gun, which was more accurate but annoying to shoot. Because I don't know if you've ever tried to shoot a lever gun from the prone. Kind of annoying. And then eventually the lever gun just kind of died, and could not be revived by my gunsmith, who was very good and just family friend. And he's like this thing's done.
So you
like
literally shot it to pieces?
Literally shot it to pieces.
What
yeah.
was it? Was it Henry or a Marlin?
I don't even know. I couldn't tell you what it was. If I saw a photo of it, I'd be able to tell you instantly. But it wasn't like a well-known brand. It was some, who knows, like very light colored. Like the stock was the light color of this table that we're sitting at.
Yeah.
And man, I shot that thing just to pieces. It didn't have a straight lever. Like the lever was kind of curved.
Oh yeah.
To fit the shape of the grip. It's around somewhere. I should send a text to my stepdad and see if he can send me a photo of it or something. I'd like to know what it is. But
sidebar, when I was at this age, like I was just barely young enough. I wasn't really allowed to shoot 22s yet. Like I didn't have my hunter safety or anything. And I was anticipating the day. I think I anticipated my 12th birthday more than I anticipated 18, 21, or 16 or anything. And that was right about when Henry Rifles started as a company, and so all their marketing was out there. So I was my dad would buy the gun magazines. I would see it, and oh man! And I also watched a lot of westerns as a kid. So big fan of the John Wayne, the Clint Eastwood, all that stuff.
There's something very satisfying about shooting a lever gun. Just period.
Yeah, and the Rifleman, the show The Rifleman, Lucas McCain. Henry had the big loop version of it. I wanted that rifle so bad.
Nice.
And to date, I've never bought it. I never actually got it when I was actually in a place to buy one. I've never actually bought one.
Go hook it up, man. But so I shot, a bajillion rounds of 22 as a kid. I mean, no idea how many I actually shot, but I'm gonna guess through like junior high and high school, somewhere in the neighborhood of a few 100,000. I mean, like without breaking a sweat. I mean, like every Christmas was like a few bricks of ammo, and we would just like shoot that out, and it was pretty darn cheap there. I mean, you could go buy a brick of CCI Hornets or something like that, and it was $18 or something like that. And so shot those for a long time. Then got like the nice 1022 that had like that spiral forged bull barrel on it. Ooh, with the walnut stock. Yeah, I saved up and I bought the fancy 1020, like the nicest 1022 that you could buy at the time. That was like $350.
Yeah,
but it was a sweet one. And then shot that one, and it was that weird, like, even though it was a nicer gun, like inarguably a way nicer gun, it was way more accurate, everything else, there was just like something about, I wasn't running a bolt or running a lever, and it kind of like took something away from me, It was like my first, like, I was like, I like, it like, even though they're not really like the way, I like guns that have a complicated manual of arms. Like when you execute like a good AK reload, you're like, dude, I am the man.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, if you do a good AR reload, you're like, hey, yeah, I didn't screw up.
I love the low cap divisions. You don't have to explain it to me.
Exactly. So but anyway, so I shot a ton of 22 when I was a kid, and I loved it. And when I started doing like action shooting sports stuff, I did start off doing a lot of practice with the 22. I had like a little Ruger Mark III, the most complicated gun on earth to put back together. But you got to get that lever just right and hold that thing upside down. And yeah, it's just grit your teeth at just the right amount of pressure. Those things are just, man, I don't know why those guns are so difficult to put back together, but they are.
Yeah, I've heard tell. I don't know that I've ever actually disassembled or reassembled.
Oh, I feel like you should do it just for the experience. We're like, oh, this is super simple. There's only like 4 parts, and somehow, and this frustrating thing with that gun is you can put it bait's together and not have it run.
Oh.
And you're like, yay, I did it. And then you go like rack the slide and nothing moves. You're like, oh man. Like, so it's a very frustrating gun. I heard like the Mark Vs or whatever they're on now, you can actually like,
I was working retail when Ruger came out. Their big brain idea was the push button disassembly. You push one button and the whole thing comes apart like the John Woo movie.
Yeah. I'm about that, because that other one was rough. So when I started shooting, I was real broke, like for real broke. I was loading 9mm on a single stage press. That's how broke I was.
Hey, I was doing it too, man.
And so I did a fair amount of 22 practice until I figured out pretty quickly shooting a Ruger Mark III translates almost in no way to shooting at the time I was shooting a Glock. Ironically, both have a very steep grip angle. So kind of closer, than everything else, but still not the same. And then since then, I've kind of gone through a few ebbs and flows. And now, ironically, I have a pretty nice 22 version of every gun that I own that's not a shotgun. So I have a like a 1911 style upper from what's the 22 company out of Idaho. They make some suppressors. They make some conversion kits. They make like some really nice like race style.
Tactical Solutions?
Yeah, I have a Tactical Solutions 1911 22 conversion upper that I don't think exists anymore. I've looked because I want to buy another magazine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you think freaking double stack 1911 magazines are expensive. Those magazines are like $180 a pop because they are just a full block of aluminum. Somehow still only hold 10 rounds. I don't understand how all of the 22 magazines hold less ammo than the centerfire version of the same thing.
I think that was one of my gripes with my Kimber was I think I used it to the point where my magazine springs were getting soft.
Oh, and your host.
There's
you can't. Yeah, it's not a thing.
For that.
No, you're not buying new springs. So I have that, which is great because I can put it on, any full size double stack 1911. And the magazines fit in the large mag well, so you get the same grip, same trigger, same everything. Put a dot up top, less recoil, of course. I have a JP Complete 22 upper that goes on one of my JP competition lowers, and it has the same scope up top, offset red dot, all the things. Like it's outfitted, it has same handguard, same barrel weight, same everything, and before we move on from that, a little quick note here. If you're doing a 22 version of your AR, there are dedicated 22 uppers, and then there are like bolt replacement 22 conversion kits. Both of these things are fine, but you do need to be aware that a 223 is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of like a 1 in 8 twist, give or take, depending on the barrel that you're running. I think I'm actually running a 7.5 twist, but a 22 barrel is going to be like a 12 to 14 twist. It is a much slower twist rate in a actual like 22 rimfire barrel than it is in a 223 barrel. So if you're shooting lead 22 bullets out of a high twist barrel, they will strip lead significantly faster than they would out of a other barrel. So you need to be pretty on it with the cleaning. You can like ruin your barrel doing that. So
yeah, I would the conversion kits seem like a better idea than they are.
Mm-hmm.
Would not shoot a conversion kit in a match rifle.
Nothing that I care about.
Nothing
for sure.
that I care about.
If it's like, I got this $400 truck gun sitting, sure.
If you simply must, I would build a cheap analog of the rifle that, if nothing else, you can skimp on the barrel, right?
Yeah.
But I would try to construct a practice gun. I would not, in Adam's case, I would not put a conversion kit in a JP super match barrel and
for sure not. Yeah.
And sling a bunch of, just because it's both going to be a pain in the butt for you to maintain that, and you're not going to get the results that you would want.
No, to be very inaccurate. Like they're not designed to shoot little tiny 30 grain bullets.
Yeah.
And then the other 22 that I have, in addition to some little, random pistols and stuff, is so when I was working for a suppressor company back in the day, we did a little bit of a trade where like we traded a suppressor for the ability to borrow a voodoo rifle for like a trade show season. So we could like, host it on something cool, show it off a little bit.
Yep.
And and I remember being like, dude, $1,700 for a barreled action. You're out of your damn mind.
Yeah.
And then I shot it the first time. I was like, I bet I can scrounge up $1,700. Yeah. And so I have a voodoo that is a exact replica, again, of my 6.5 Creedmoor. So exactly the same chassis system. I have this old XLR carbon fiber chassis that they don't make anymore, which is kind of a bummer because it's pretty cool. And on top, I have a Strike Eagle 5-25, which has the same reticle as the Razor that I have on my 6.5 Creedmoor. So it is essentially a duplicate of that gun, and then I shoot that in like NRL Hunter and stuff like that. But I have like a more or less scale and weight clone of all of my guns in a 22. And I've started using them quite a bit. I think there's some pitfalls that people fall into. The big thing is like the recoil is different, right? Everyone's like, oh, my 223 recoil is like a 22. No, it doesn't.
No. Stop it.
Yeah. It's really light. It's great. Good. Yep. Not a lot of dot movement, but a 20, like, especially mine, because, JP rifles aren't light. I have a pretty not light full size 22. It literally does not move. Like, you pull the trigger and you can't tell if the gun went off or not if you can't hear the shot. So that can lead to everybody's favorite tactical word, training scars. Hyphenated word? Phrase? It's not a word. It's a hyphenated word.
I'm not going to dignify it as a word.
Okay, fair enough. So, but everyone's favorite, horse to beat, like, oh, you shouldn't do competition stuff because you'll develop training scars. So that's true, yes, kind of. But in the same way that if you're not paying attention to your grip and dry fire, then when you go to live fire, you forget to hang on to the gun. Yeah, like,
there's plenty of ways to get training scars.
Exactly. So if you're doing it for the sake of practice and you understand what you're doing and you understand the pitfalls, I think you can get a lot out of 22 shooting. And basically the way that I think of it is it's dry fire with confirmation. And so I think the place where I find I get the most use is and actually our buddy Zach kind of turned me onto this because he started doing this and I was like, that's a pretty good idea. So going out to the range, like on those days, for us, we're really lucky here that we have 2 USPSA matches a month, and they're on the second and third weekends of the month, and they leave all the walls and target stands and everything up between the two. So if you are inclined, you can just roll out to the range and staple up some paper and have like whole stages.
Been here for 3 days, and yes, you guys are super lucky.
Oh my God. Yeah, you're so lucky. Yeah, having that range there is
coming from a guy who has 24-hour access to an indoor range.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, although I would like a 100-yard indoor range. That'd be pretty handy in some cases. But super lucky. So I don't shoot stages for practice very often for a lot of reasons. But one of them is it's a good way to go through a whole ton of ammo really fast without really working on anything. And so one of the things that Zach kind of turned me on to was like going out and basically shooting like every 4th or 5th round with a center fire. And then shooting the rest of 22, where you're like working on your movement, your entries, everything. And if you're doing stuff right, your time should be pretty darn close. Like if you're executing everything right, like, it's going to be a little bit faster with the 22 because you don't, your dot's not leaving the target and then coming back on. So you can shoot a little bit more aggressively on that second shot. But it is a really good way to get in like way more reps and then just like, kind of like sprinkle in some center fire to make sure that you're still kind of doing it right and you're not forgetting what you're there for.
So I guess that brings me back to where I was a few weeks ago, because I'm coming into the 2025 season pretty. I know the place I need to grow is in my long range shooting. So been talking to Riser, been talking to my friend Travis, and like, hey man, what do I do? I'm frustrated because it's kind of a thing in my head. It's kind of a thing you can only learn through experience. You have to go to the place, you got to do the thing, you got to shoot the real ammo in a real environment. And it has all the challenges of access to a venue like that and the cost. And to my head, I was at a place where I forgot 22s existed.
Mm-hmm.
Really, like, because my lady was going to an intro to handgun class at Vortex. She took the intro Vortex Edge class, and they were kind of alluding to a 22, and she knows next to nothing about shooting. So she's asking me, well, what's this other thing? And they're like, well, we might use it, but we probably won't. You guys are better than that kind of. And they start them off right on 9mm. She's like, what's that? And I'm like, oh, a 22. She's like, what's a 22? And I explained it to her. And she's like, do you have those? And I was like, yeah, I guess I do. And she's like, we should shoot those sometime. I was like, yeah, I mean, like, we've been on a few shooting dates where we just skipped right to 9mm, and I just skipped right over it. So in my head, 22 doesn't exist. And Travis tells me, he's like, dude, you got to start shooting some 22. I'm like, and that just like picks the scab on everything I feel about 22. And he's like, I'm telling you, dude, you got to. He's like, there's a 100-yard range down there, which we have a 100-yard indoor range at Vortex. And he said, you got to go down there. We have the steel targets. They have the little 22 steel targets for, there's an internal employee, rimfire league, and then various types of customer experiences that they do indoor training with 22s. We have all the stuff. He's like, and it's all on a cart. It all lives on a U-line cart, ready to go.
Oh, sweet.
So he's like, you need to get your ass down there, wheel that cart out there, put those things out there. And he's like, between 50 and 100 yards is simulated in 22 world. That is the equivalent of 200 to 400 in 223. You need to spread all those things out in there, and you just need to work positions and holds until you can't freaking stand it. And I was like, wow, I don't like your logic, but I'll try. So
a few thousand rounds later.
Yeah, I got 10,000 rounds of 22.
Attaboy.
I walked into one of my accounts, and I was like, hey, is there some 22 ammo around here you're tired of looking at? He didn't even beat an he pointed at 2 cases right by the front door.
I'll take it.
I took it, and this stuff is gross. I mean, it's all in peanut butter jars. Like, instead of a 500-round brick, it's a 500-round peanut butter jar.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like a jar of crayons. Like, it's waxy. It is, brother, ooh.
I don't know. So even the nice stuff is waxy. Like, if you're shooting Center X or something, you load up like 10 rounds into the Voodoo, and you're like, why are my hands disgusting?
This is, even in 22 world, this is the dirtiest 22 ammo I've ever shot in my life. But I do the thing.
So you put a conversion kit in your 80M upper?
No, I relocated my 1522. I put a razor on it.
Attaboy.
So I put a razor 1-6 on a $300 AR probably, and I go down there. I zero my 400-yard hash mark for 100 yards, and I go to town. And basically, this is a gun. Even before this is a gun where if I get it out, I'm shooting a brick. If I shoot one round, I'm shooting 500. Yep. I'm not leaving until it's gone. And I did that for several weeks. Not several weeks. We'll call it 3 weeks. Where it's like, okay, after kind of one of the shotgun qualifiers, and like the next thing on my radar was Texas 3-Gun Championship. And so it's like, okay, it's time to, kind of like Dan Horner says, you got the balloons floating.
Yep.
All right, it's like this balloon has to go up.
Let's knock this balloon into the rafters.
Yeah, and so I was doing it, and got pretty good. I shot 10,000 rounds of 22 through this thing. This is one of the guns where I would shoot it until it would stop working. I'm usually not this guy, but in this case, I am this guy. I shot it until it would stop working. It was filthy, dirty, gross.
Solid.
And I remember the reason why you don't do that, because then it's
really hard to clean.
It's really a big project to clean it.
I pulled a sonic cleaner off of a prize table at like the second MGM Ironman I ever shot. Pretty much the only thing I use it for is when my 22s get gross enough that they don't run anymore. I'll just take the gun apart and I'll throw the whole thing in there.
And I'm scared to do that with this one because a lot of it's plastic.
Oh, I don't know how that goes.
Yeah, me neither. That's why I haven't done it.
I'm not sure.
I assure you, though, this barrel is leaded beyond recognition.
Yeah, it's just like not right.
Because that 400-yard hole turned into a 500-yard hole. And I started to wonder if I'd shot the barrel out.
Well, the good news is you can probably saw the barrel off, and it won't be a short-barreled rifle, because if it's a smooth bore, it's not a rifle.
Ooh, so there's that.
You might have found the secret sauce there.
Yeah, I did a quick poll around the office if we thought you could shoot out a 22 barrel, and this consensus was that no, or if so, it's some astronomical number that can't really be gotten to. And but he said
you can let them up.
He said it's definitely. I described it to him. He's like, "Oh yeah, that thing is leaded AF."
Yeah, you're gonna get a cleaning rod and a beer, a good podcast, and just start sawing on that thing.
But I got to a point where I was pretty comfortable. Like I was, it's basically a simulated 3-gun course. Because, funny story. I was shooting in there on a Saturday morning, and some other guys came in to shoot, and they were PRS guys or NRL 22 guys, and they're like, "Oh, you got the big targets out there," because like this gun this gun shoots 2 MOA, maybe, okay, and so I have the 6-inchers and the 5-inchers out there, and they have
that's the biggest thing in the pack,
and they have them down to like 1 inch or less,
No, so I bought like the NRL 22 target pack because I've shot a couple of those matches, and then without derailing Amax's story here too far, the sweet thing about that is like the targets are stupid cheap. I think like the whole target pack of like 20 targets was like $140 or something for all these steel targets and the hangers and all the stuff. Because they're
like steel targets you buy for any other gun.
Yeah, where one target is $140. And but the smallest target that you shoot in NRL 22, which is the small plate on the KYL rack, is 0.20 inches wide.
Yeah.
So the target that you're shooting at is physically narrower than the bullet you're shooting at it.
Yeah.
Just pretty wild.
So these guys are kind of making fun of me for having the big targets out. They don't know much about 3-gun. But they're doing their thing, and I start doing my thing. So I'm just like, running the plates back and forth, the right to left to right, inside out, outside in, different positions. And he turns over to my friend Matt, turns over to me, and he's like, "Dude, you are crushing those plates." And I'm like, "I don't know, this is kind of what I do." He's like, "Yeah, we shoot at a lot smaller plates than that, but we don't shoot them that fast."
Yeah.
So I get to this place where I'm like, I'm practiced up and everything. And then this episode is probably going to come out after the Texas 3-Gun Championship.
I'd assume so. We could do whatever, but
or
probably.
Whatever. But so I go to Texas 3-Gun Championship, and this year was the year of crazy wind. Like I've been to every Texas 3-Gun Championship match since I think it started, and this was the year everybody was talking about the wind. It was just not that it was like a hurricane. It was always present, very unpredictable. So did not cast an even hand on the match. And so when I'm shooting those stages, and I'm not struggling the way I was before, like I've definitely had stages where it's like I'm holding what I plan to hold, and I'm not getting a hit, and I'm not getting any signature, because the bullet's going off into the trees or whatnot, or there's a card behind it, so you can't tell where it's hitting. It's like I got nothing, like 5 good ones, right, left, top, down.
Add a half mil.
And then I'm 10 shots into that, and I'm like, I got nothing.
Yeah.
So that kind of frustration is what led me to 6-arc, that whole thing we've talked about a couple times. And so I'm shooting, and I'm definitely not having that problem, but the wind's still blowing it around. And so I'm so frustrated because I stepped up to stage 10 this year, and I was like ready to crush that thing. I didn't think those slugs were nothing to worry about. Turns out they were. and I still had a mediocre to horrible time on the long range rifle from what I needed to be where I wanted to be. And so I was driving back because I was staying with Travis, and I'm like, on Saturday, at the end of the day on Saturday, I'm like, I turned to Travis, I'm like, am I any better? Because I've gone down this path of that he set me on with his 22, and I spent a ton of time shooting. I don't particularly like doing this thing, I'm working on the thing I don't like, right? Because that's how you get better. I'm like, am I any better? And he thinks about it for a little bit, and he's like, well, when you miss, is it an elevation issue or a wind issue? Shit, I hadn't thought about it that way. I'm like, nope, it's pretty much right and left when I miss. He's like, well, that's the wind, and you can't simulate that inside. So, yes, you are better.
Yeah,
thank you.
Well, and the interesting thing with 22, so I've shot, I don't know, like a half dozen or so NRL 22 matches now, and by the way, they are so fun, like just ridiculously awesome matches. And it's funny because there's actually like a prop list where it's like, hey, if you want to start an NRL 22 club, like buy these props. And it's like a trip to Home Depot and a couple $100. And so the props are like a chair, a 5-gallon bucket, a 2.5-gallon bucket, a car tire, a sawhorse, a 3-step ladder. It's like those are the props, like a 55-gallon drum. And so it's like, if me and Maxwell were like out in the field somewhere and was like, oh, hell, let's have a quick competition. You go set up some random stuff to shoot at and I'll go nail some targets into the ground. And like, that's kind of like the vibe. Like it's super low key, but people also have like $10,000 rifles, and there's like 6-year-olds there and there's 60-year-olds there. And, you know, you can just like have a conversation. You don't have to go down and reset targets. Like it's like, this scene is awesome. It's so cool. And there's a couple here that they do one at Slipsa once a month. They do one down by Springdale once a month. And my problem with those, and the reason why I started shooting them, besides them just being fun, was I wanted to get better at NRL Hunter, which I'm used to sports that are scored. Excuse me. I'm used to sports that are scored. Murph, we're trying to have a podcast here, man.
Hashtag dog noise.
Go on. So I'm used to sports that are scored based on time. And so with NRL Hunter, there is a time cap, but you're scored based on your shot. So you get 2 points for your first hit. If you miss that, you get 1 point for a follow-up shot. And if you miss that, you don't get another shot. And then like one shot in that sport is like 5 places in the match. And NRL 22 is the same way, where it's like, there is a time limit. You get like 2 minutes on a stage generally. And I would shoot a stage in like 40 seconds and miss one shot and be like, yeah. And everyone's like, what are you doing, dude? Why are you moving that? You don't need to go. You could go half that speed and still be the fastest person here. But if you miss a shot on every stage,
you ain't nothing.
You're nothing, dude. Like, you need to miss one shot on every 5th stage to like have a prayer at winning this match. And you know, because occasionally people just clean the whole match. And then there is, the way they do that is there is one stage that is a timed stage, and then if people tie, then whoever had the fastest time on the timed stage, they'll win. But so I had that problem where I was moving very fast, but I wasn't taking enough time with the actual shooting part of it. Because I was shooting like a 3-gun stage. I'm like, oh, boom, I missed. And I'm like, oh, wait, I don't get a follow-up shot. You just move on to the next target. But lost my train of thought here. Shooting accuracy. Oh, wind. So wind with a 22. It's an interesting thing because you can kind of learn to read wind while shooting a 22 because the wind very much affects it, but it almost affects it too much. Like, it doesn't take a lot of wind to start pushing a 22. And I've had stages where you're holding left wind at 40 yards and right wind at 100 yards because switching wind can actually push a bullet left and then right in a 22. And I've had stages where I shot one in the winter where it was like pretty kind of blustery day, and I was holding 3 mils of wind at 100 yards. Which is an absurd amount of wind to hold. Like,
I've held 3 mils of wind in 3-gun exactly never.
Yeah, exactly never. Yeah, if like I haven't even held that much wind in like an NRL Hunter match at like 800 yards.
Even
like,
that windy year at Ironman, hashtag drink.
Woo!
All right. The windy year at Ironman, I still only held the first hash mark.
Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
That's the most wind I've ever held.
It's such an absurd amount. So it's like, yeah, you can kind of learn to read wind. Like, it's blowing left, it's blowing right. There's switching wind. You can but it's almost, you know, like you're shooting inside and you're like, well, you can't learn to read wind inside. It's like, well, when you go outside, the wind affects the bullet so much that it's almost worthless.
Yeah. So like, similar to kind of our frustrations in 22 and other aspects, it's like you get to, for wind, am I understanding right in that you're kind of getting a feel for the gross indicators of wind and what it's going to do to a bullet? Like, you're becoming aware of the wind and what it does, but you're not learning to read the wind one for one, what it's going to do in a center fire cartridge?
So I would say the best that you could really hope for is you learn the indicators for a 6-mile-an-hour wind or a 10-mile-an-hour wind or a 12-mile-an-hour wind, and then you learn that, but you're not like, oh, it's going to be, this equals 2 mils or this equals 4 mils. Like, no, this equals 8-mile-an-hour wind, and then you look at your dope for your other cartridge, understanding what 8-mile-an-hour wind looks like.
Right, because like in my head, if I were to, in the 3-gun world, if I were to identify as a pistol or a shotgun shooter, all right, and you step up to a 3-gun stage, like I understand that the wind is blowing, maybe if it's windy.
Mm-hmm.
There was a chapter in my life where I was a commercial pesticide applicator for agriculture, so I had to read wind and log it in my report. So I'm aware that there's wind, like, and I could probably pretty accurately tell at my face if it's 5 or if it's 10 or if it's 15.
Mm-hmm.
But that's about the level I'm aware of. Talk to other competitors, other top-level guys. They get to a place. They arrive at a venue, and they look at the trees. They look at the grass. They're looking at wind indicators. I heard some people on my squad talking about they saw birds flying around while we were on the rock stage, and they noted which way the birds were hovering in the air because they hover into the wind.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that just
sweet.
never occurred to me. Like never in a million years,
Well, in 3-gun world, even the guys that know how to read wind in 3-gun world are infants compared to the guys that know how to read wind in PRS world.
Right.
Like I've shot a couple like PRS matches. So the thing with the NRL Hunter matches is they're all blind stages. So you're never watching somebody shoot a stage and nobody's ever watching you shoot a stage. And you're kind of on your own. Like there's sort of squads, but there's not really. You're just sort of kind of hanging out by yourself. So when you're shooting a PRS match, you're on a squad and the whole squad moves stages the same way you normally do. And I was talking to a guy about wind, just trying to be a sponge and soak things up and understand what was going on, because I understand that like in that world, I basically don't know what I'm doing. And he was talking about, he's like, yeah, you have to look at this landscape like it's a river. And he's like, as the canyon gets narrow there and dips down, he's like, the wind's going to increase and then it's going to go down this hill and then it's going to speed up the other side and they're going to have an updraft and that's going to, take away a bullet drop because it's, coming through this canyon, then it's turning right, then it's blowing up the hill. And he's like, so in addition to looking at like wind indicators, yeah, you can see, oh, it's blowing this much here and it's blowing this much there and it's blowing left here. He's like, but you also have to look at the terrain surrounding everything and understand, oh, well, the wind's going to curve around this canyon. Even if all your wind indicators look like they're going left, at some point it's actually going straight at you, and then it's going to be coming left because the wind's going to travel through there. And so his description was basically like, pretend like it's water flowing in the direction of the wind indicators and imagine what that water would do if it was flowing over all of these things.
Yeah, that's probably the best analogy I've heard, because I've heard other people say that too. Because we kind of think of it as an expanse of nothingness,
mm-hmm.
The atmosphere, but like you need to think of it more as like fluid, like water, like flowing water, moving around. And that's kind of the big oversight that I had my eyes open to, even though it's been there the whole time. I mean, but like using it in this way and I didn't understand that it was so 1-for-1, like inside of 100 yards, which is a distance that most people who have access to a range have access to. Whereas I would say not most people, or a minority of people, have access to 200 yards, 300 yards, 400 yards or more.
Yep.
Most people in the sport, active in the sport, have access at least occasionally to 100 yards. And inside of 100 yards, you can simulate with the 22 the challenges that you're going to experience with a full power 3-gun rifle at a national level competition. And that was kind of I don't know, it's almost embarrassing to like how long it took me to understand that, because like when I first started at Vortex, that was one of the things the little fad they had going at the time. They were doing, it was kind of the beginning, like NRL Hunter wasn't really a thing yet. They were, there's a couple guys in the office, they were having 60 MOA rails made.
Oh, yeah.
and they were trying to shoot a soda can at 600 yards.
Yep.
With a 22. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah, they're using our most expensive scopes, and that was what they did for giggles on a Sunday, was try to figure out how they could hit a soda can at 600 yards.
What's the company that makes the prism thing that you mount in front of the scope?
Oh, hell if I know.
But
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so there's I think it's 22X or ELR 22 or something, but it's basically that. It's like they're shooting just ridiculous distances with the 22, and they actually lay the targets at like a 45-degree angle because the bullets are basically just like falling out of the air at that distance. And oh man, remind me to tell you my best 22 story ever. Jesus, calm down. And anyways, so there's some company that makes like a prism that you can mount in front of your scope, like you would mount like an old thermal optic that's like co-witnessed. And it basically adds something like 40 or 60 minutes to your elevation or some amount of mils. I don't exactly know how it works, but I know that it is a thing so you don't have to run these like crazy rails. So you can still use your same rifle to shoot at like 40 yards and then mount this thing on there, and it just like changes the beam of light. So it adds 30 minutes or something, you know? And yeah, so it's, you know, people do crazy stuff with 22s. And ironically, I almost took a minute to run off and grab my dope cards, but you know what he was saying, for what Travis was saying about, you know, 100 yards equaling 400 yards to 223, I think is like pretty accurate. The interesting thing is, I looked at my two guns because I have a dope card for each one of them, because for NRL Hunter you use like solid dope cards because there's no time to pull out phones and all that stuff. And my dope card on my 22 at 100 yards is freakishly close to my dope card on my 6.5 Creedmoor at 1,000 yards. Like, you basically just like take a zero out of everything, and it's like almost the same dope card. And it's like, it's pretty sweet. But so I do a lot of, you know, I do the NRL 22 stuff, and I do a lot of positional work with my JP 22, like, you know, tank traps, boulders, tires, the bed of my truck, whatever, and do like what you're talking about, like 3-gun stages. So if I'm practicing essentially shooting the long range version of a 3-gun stage, I'm going to practice with my AR platform. If I'm practicing for NRL, I'm going to practice with my NRL 22 platform. If I'm practicing for USPSA, I'm going to practice with my 1911 platform. So I'm going to run the same type of platform. My JP is quite as accurate as my Voodoo. JP has a newer, super accurate semi-auto thing, which I don't own yet. So I'm kind of in your world where it's like at 100 yards, I got to shoot at like the 3-inch steel instead of like the 1/2-inch steel. But man, you can get a lot of work done in that world. And especially if you have something that's like pretty similar, like having, you know, I also have a razor on my 22, and offset red dot and all the things. So I can set up like, oh, I'm going to shoot the paper with the offset red dot, and then shoot, you know, this stuff on 6 power, and then shoot that other piece of paper with the offset red dot, and go out and practice for a whole afternoon, and I'm at like $10.
Yeah.
It's pretty sweet. And, you know, there's few things in this world that are more satisfying than shooting a suppressed 22. Like, I'll screw the can on there and just hang out with no ears and chat with the guys, and it's awesome. Like, I love them.
I have to say, and that's kind of my epiphany on the whole thing, is because it's been very frustrating over the years when you look at, you have to compete with guys like Greg Jordan and Dan Horner and Daniel Jurasic and Taylor Olhausen and whatnot. You see these guys out on their ranges that they have access to. They're using their resources.
Mm-hmm.
They're out there practicing that stuff. And it's just like, I very rarely have had access to that kind of stuff. Or if I did, I didn't have the resources. So I might have the range access, but I don't have the ammo access.
Yeah.
Or something like that. And so it's like, well, how do you compete with that? And like at a fairly advanced level, you can pretty readily simulate that with 22.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's one of the few places where I really think you can continue to progress at an intermediate to advanced level, and still get growth. Because like on the flip side of that coin, like I knew people when I was in Minnesota, they would shoot dot torture weekly with a 22,
Mm-hmm.
working on their pistol skills, but they never really progressed past A class doing that. Like, so I feel like in a lot of instances, once you have the fundamentals of shooting a gun down, like grip, sight alignment, press the trigger without disturbing it, that's about as far as I feel like you can get it to go, unless like you alluded to earlier, where you're essentially doing live fire, dry fire on the range and prolonging your source of center fire ammunition.
Yeah.
But like, this seems like full breath practice for kind of long range skills, either in the long range games or the long range component of this game. Because I'd set up the 22 rifle. I'd set it up for essentially like a PCSL setup, and I was going to do some carbine work with it, you know, like I would with a pistol. And after a couple sessions, I'm like, there's not enough recoil here.
Yeah,
I'm not getting anything.
You're not getting anything out of it. Yeah.
You know, other than the jollies of pressing the trigger, like it's just, it wasn't productive practice time. But long range stuff, it definitely does.
Yep.
The other thing I'm interested in, I have not done this yet, but I was talking to one of my friends who went to the World Shoot last time, the shotgun World Shoot, and he was trying to get a place to practice shotgun, and he was having a hard time finding a place to practice that was within kind of the radius of places he could get to on a regular basis.
Yep.
To do
Which
it.
is a key ingredient.
Right. Because we have range access for single projectiles. Shooting shotguns in our range at Vortex, big no-no. Yep. And it makes a huge mess. Like, it's just a no-go.
Yeah.
So he's trying, well, what do I do? He was, and so he was participating in open. This is Ruben. I think Ruben actually listened. So Ruben was saying that he was looking for a way to practice open, and he looked at his PCC. He's like, man, the
pretty
stock's
close.
the same, the pistol grip's the same, blah, blah, blah. He's like, truth be told, a lot of my like live fire practice that I did was with my PCC. And then I would, confirm with shotgun when I could, but bulk of it I did with PCC. And I was like, well, what if, because I kind of have a similar challenge now, what if I got a 1022 and I, put a Viper red dot on the top, like it's on my Benelli.
Yep.
And I somehow got a chassis that would simulate the stock dimensions of a Benelli.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, that.
Those two aren't far off to start.
Though that couldn't be that far off.
Yeah.
It's not going to be the same. You're obviously not going to get the quad loading practice. You are not going to get the recoil.
Yeah.
But like,
For mount the gun,
for
press
mount the
trigger.
gun,
Yep.
index it, break a shot, and call the shot, like live fire confirmation of shot calling.
Yep.
That could be pretty legit.
For sure.
So I'm kind of in a 22 renaissance right now.
Nice.
As to what it is and what it can do for me.
So I think one of the things that people need to be aware of. So, I mean, we talked about rifle stuff a lot. Man, I am still have a little bit of a sore throat from North Carolina. That place has wiped me out. When it comes to the pistol, the thing you need to be really aware of, because more so than the rifle, the difference in recoil in the pistol is like a real thing. And so you can kind of just like put the dot on it and press the trigger twice at almost any distance with a 22 and get a couple hits. So I will quite often essentially send one shot at every target. And because I want to take that out of my head that like, oh, I can just put the dot there and go click, click, and I'm just going to get 2 center A zone hits. I think the thing where the 22 can be very helpful in live fire practice with a pistol is transitions. Like basically steel challenge, right? Like steel challenge is a draw and a bunch of transitions, and that's all that it is. And
limited human function transitions.
Yeah, limited human function transitions where you're starting to press the trigger before the dot's even on the target. And one of the first episodes that we did was on like where mid-pack shooters are losing the most time. And, my first answer on that was on transitions. There's a lot of mid-pack shooters who are shooting ridiculous splits with really mediocre transitions. So it's just ba ba ba, and I think doing transition practice with a 22 is great because you don't have to worry about, taming recoil for the follow-up shot and all of the other things that go along with that, but just setting out a few pieces of steel and then adding in some of those things that don't exist in Steel Challenge, mainly movement. So a few pieces of steel, a couple of poles or cones or whatever, so you're moving from position to position, and basically shooting like transition drills with a little bit of movement into it. So you're used to shooting your transition drill, leaving, because as you shoot a bunch of 22, it's really easy to just start standing up more and more and more upright because you're just not doing any recoil control at all. But if you leave from a really upright position, then you have to do a drop step, and it takes a bunch of time. So adding a little bit of movement in there will add in, I'm gonna shoot from an athletic stance so I can leave this position, and also I can start my movement on the way out as I'm breaking the shot on the last target. I can start breaking a shot on the first target in the second position on my way in, and then shooting through, like a little shoot these 3 plates, run to that cone and shoot those 3 plates again drill can really work wonders for, me still. Like, I still do things like that on a pretty regular basis.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of one of those things, I almost put it in the category of slow down and get your hits. Like, the essence of where that started, there is some truth in it, but you kind of have to recognize the limits of what that's going to do for you. There's a lot you can do with 22, but you have to be very cognizant of its limitations.
Yep.
And cater the training to, again, because it's a precious resource. So, like, actually working on stuff that's going to get gains, similar to like movement. People are like, well, I need to work on movement. Okay. What you really need to work on is leaving a position and entering a position. You need to come from full speed and stop, and go from a stop to full speed. How far you move at full speed, kind of irrelevant, and really is going to turn your training session into more of a workout than a training session.
Yeah.
So kind of like Riser's saying, like, you can double tap and get 2 alphas. That's not really, you can't effectively train doubles with a 22.
Yeah.
But what you can effectively train is transitions. So that's limitations. You can only get certain pieces of it that you would get from full power ammunition, similar to dry fire. There's only certain pieces you can get, and certain pieces that you just have to do live.
Yeah, and other things like rolling through positions, where if you're rolling past a wall with a port in it, and you're just going to break one shot on the way through, and you don't want to come to a complete stop, that's a great thing to practice with the 22. Mm-hmm. Like, shoot a target on the left, roll past that port, maybe pause the feet, but keep the upper body rolling through as you break a single shot at it, and then pick up your speed again and shoot a target on the right. Like, that's a fantastic drill that you could do with a 22. It doesn't need to be full power ammo. You're gaining nothing from it. Just really, there's a lot of stuff that we do in the sport. Like, if you couldn't practice for shooting without shooting, dry fire wouldn't be a thing. But it's pretty darn clear that dry fire is super, super effective. And I think used correctly, 22 can bridge the gap between live fire and dry fire, where it's like, yeah, if we all had just pallets of ammo in our garage and we could shoot whatever we wanted, we would just shoot live fire every time we went to the range. But none of us can afford to do that. So if you can bridge that gap with some 22, get in some effective practice, throw in some full power 9mm or 223 or whatever, kind of sprinkled in throughout the day to make sure that you're not lying to yourself. You can get a lot out of a $20 brick ammo.
Well, here's a question that I have. So if you have no 22 equipment right now, as pertains to like action shooting trainers, do you think, given its limitations and the limitations of this other thing I'm going to mention, which do you think is a better investment of training dollars? A 22 and the subsequent ammo, or a dry fire device, like a laser dry fire device, or a virtual reality simulator?
Between those three?
Yeah, well, I kind of put I put the Mantis system and the Virtusim and kind of the same.
In the same category. I mean, in my mind, for sure, a 22.
I would agree.
I haven't shot the VR stuff. It looks fun. Like, it looks like a fun way to go, like, kill some time, in the basement.
It looks like a very compelling video game.
It looks like a very compelling video game. I've talked to some people about it. It doesn't sound like it's practice. Like, I think it might be some interesting visual training. It sounds like the one, like, real drawback is there's no depth of field change because everything is essentially, like, on the same plane. So, like, visually, it looks the same if you're looking at a picture of it, but in reality, it doesn't look the same because there's no actual depth to what's going on. Yeah. Which is, like, this is a super visual sport. So, like, that kind of, like, subtle nuance matters. I've looked at, like, the Mantis things and stuff like that. I honestly don't see the point. I don't.
Yeah,
I'm
kind of with some other folks in that, like, if it inspires you to practice more, then it's probably good value. But, like, I see more value, as little value as I've seen in the past. I see more value in 22 and 22 equipment, because at some point you have to go out into the outside and do this sport in the real world, and you kind of have to experience it. And it's not a simulation, like shooting a 22 bullet is still launching a bullet, that flies in an arc, is manipulated by the atmosphere. I would say you get a more comprehensive training experience from going out into the outside and shooting real bullets instead of simulating it in virtual reality or with a laser.
And I would say for a 3-gun shooter specifically, I think the most value comes from the rifle, because the positional shooting, I mean, it like we've said a million times in this show, like, the rifle is where, especially long-range rifle, is where 3-gun matches are won and lost. And I think the big value of 22 and rifle is you can set stuff out at distances. There is a not insignificant amount of drop, so you're running actual holds. So you can't lie to yourself if you've forgot to hold for 250, which is actually 70 or whatever. So you can basically, like, look at your holds. You can put I put a 22 into a ballistics calculator to figure out, like, how everything fell. And you can look at that on your reticle and be like, if I'm zeroed at 40 yards, then 70 yards is 280 and 80 yards is 320. And, like, however it falls. And so you can run, your 400 hash is 100 yards and so on and so forth. So you can stop thinking about it in terms of 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 yards, and you can start thinking of those drops in 223 hold increments and run your so when you're shooting these positional drills, not only are you practicing getting into position, breaking a shot, confirming your hit, moving on to the next position, all the things, but you're also practicing running actual holds in your reticle while you're doing it. Because a big part that people run into for long range shooting is the only time they ever actually run their holds is on a stage at some match that they freaking flew to South Carolina for.
That's me.
So
that's me for a long time.
And it's super tough to be like, oh, I'm doing this thing on the clock essentially for the first time. And I've started doing that. I have a little, dry fire thing taped to my wall here. I got this can't remember what it's called, but it's a thing that screws onto the end of your scope, and it basically changes the focal depth of your scope. And so you can practice, like, full scale PRS stuff at, like, 3 yards in your basement. And so I actually practice, like, different holds. Like, I'll just circle random numbers on my dope card, because in NRL 22 you're looking at your dope card between shots and dialing. So I'll just circle random numbers on there and then, dial between each one, or, do one where I'm running the holds on the reticle and get used to that, like, visual. Because especially if you're running, like, like a Razor 1-10 with, like, a big Christmas tree reticle, like, there's a lot going on in that reticle. And it takes a bit of practice to drop in there and hold 1.5 mils.
Right. Yeah. Like, I'm glad you brought that up, because, like, folks will say, like, in my world, a lot of times they'll talk about reticles. In my professional world, like, oh, the reticle's super busy, blah 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 blah. Like a Tremor 3, Tremor 3. If you just look through it, it looks very busy. When I actually had some training on Tremor 3 and it had all the different components explained to me and what they are, what they're used for, it doesn't look so busy to me anymore because I understand what those things in, and I can kind of separate it into the 3 or 4 components. So that's kind of what you're explaining there, is like you're getting used to living in that space and you're getting comfortable with what those numbers mean, and when I use them, it's not unfamiliar, which is really the point of practicing.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's nice to do that where it's like the thing with dry fire, and I think the better you get at it, I think at a certain level you could essentially go to the range and dry fire long range stages, making up distances for stuff, and more or less get the same value out that you would get with a 22. Although a 20, it's just the fact that you actually have a bullet going at a thing that's going to hit something takes all the guesswork out of it, because the problem with dry fire is it's too easy to lie to yourself. Like it's really easy to come down to the basement here and like bust out some drill and be like, oh man, 110% run on that classifier. Hell yeah. Exactly. And then you're like, did I really see the dot in the A zone before I just smashed the trigger twice? And was I really hanging onto the gun the way that I meant to? So I think it does a great job, like bridging that gap. And I don't know, like I'm a little different from AMAX. Like I find 22s to be super fun to shoot just in general. Like I'll bring a suppressed 22 on, like we're camping and climbing and stuff out in the desert all the time. Like I'll just bring out a couple little steel targets and a suppressed 22 and we'll just hang out around the campfire and shoot stuff from camp all the time. Like I think
that's
20
completely not a Midwestern thing at all.
Yeah, that's a Utah thing. But like I have had the opportunity to shoot a lot of guns in my life. Pretty much the only thing left on my bucket list is a Dillon Arrow minigun. So if anybody from Dillon's listening and wants to make my dreams come true, I'd love to shoot a minigun. I've shot just about everything else. And honestly, like a nice 22 with a good suppressor on it is about the most fun thing to shoot in my mind. Like it's just pure joy the entire time. It just brings out the kid in me.
So if we go back to episode we did a few times ago on getting started. So if you know what you know now, but you don't have any 22 training equipment, would you reinvest in what you have, or would you buy something else?
I would buy the same 3 that I have. I would get a 1911 upper that I can put on whatever my competition lower is. I would buy a Voodoo again for sure. They're awesome. And I would buy, probably just like whatever the current version of the JP20. So mine is a JP22. I think they have like a, whatever the new one is. It's just like everything's kind of cleaned up and a little bit more accurate. I don't think they make the version that I have anymore. I think they've kind of moved on. But like those 3 guns, they're the same size, they're the same weight, they have the same trigger. Like they are just clones of my baseline guns. And I can't imagine anything better for training on.
Yeah, so what I don't have a bolt gun. So on the rifle, the M&P 1522, originally I bought it because it was A, affordable. It was B, a fully functional 22. So it wasn't a conversion. It was a full gun, and the bolt locks back. The safeties all work the same. It was a complete analog of an AR, and I would have to say that I don't know I would buy that again. I heard some people out there took issue with me recommending an Artemis as my go-to pistol in the 3-gun episode. But so here's the example, right? So I bought the cheap thing, the economical thing.
How much was the JP22? Or not the JP22, the MP22?
I don't remember. It was it was no more than $500. I want to say it was $400 something.
Okay.
Brand new. So I bought that. I have the thing. I can do all the stuff that we've been talking about for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the deal.
Yeah, so shoot at 6-inch targets at 100 yards.
Yeah, I have a limitation in accuracy.
It weighs nothing.
It does not balance the same. It doesn't have the same stock. It does have the same trigger. I do have a high power trigger in it. And the handguard isn't free floated. So if I want to, I tried this actually. If I want to simulate bipod action,
yeah, that's a. Mm-hmm.
So I have quickly found a limitation in the value of what I would buy. So like, and I think you told this person this is how I roll. This is how I roll. Like if I'm gonna buy the thing, I'm gonna buy the thing.
Yep.
And I'm not gonna buy the thing until I can buy the thing.
Yep.
So if I were going to do it again, I don't know that I would buy the same thing. I would probably buy the current version of the JP.
Yep.
That was actually the recommendation you and a few other people gave me.
Yep. I just pulled it up on the website. The JP Upper, the current version of the Fancy Pants one is $900. So
right.
it's a whole chunk more. Like it's twice
thing.
As much more.
Yeah.
But you can shoot 1-inch targets at 100 yards all day.
Right. So yeah, I need the accuracy component, and I want a more accurate analog of what I have, and it's worth twice as much money to me. Actually, it's probably even worth more than that to get those aspects out of the purchase than just having a thing that spits the bullets.
Yep.
Because I quickly found on my saga here with the positional practice, I found an accuracy limitation. Like I could do everything right and still miss the target, just mechanical inaccuracy of this system.
Well, and there's also a visual component, which is if we're trying to simulate getting onto 3-minute targets, but you're practicing on a 6-minute target,
yes.
There's a visual component of that where it's like, oh, this position doesn't actually need to be that good. I can have a lot more movement in my double kneel because I'm still within the target, but you actually have twice as much movement as you can have if you're shooting that distance or simulated distance target in a match like Texas 3 gun.
Yep. And so that's where I think a lot of times when we talk about gear and buying gear, people can't define value past the cheapest.
Yep.
So it's worth twice as much because it has
more value,
3 times as much training value.
Yeah.
To me, on the handgun side,
so the handgun side, I would say I kind of stumbled into that. I'm not going to get into the details of how it came to be that thing lives in my safe, but I did not pay what that thing is worth. And I think you get less value out of the handgun than you do out of the rifle. I think the real value is in positional work on the rifle. I don't know that I would rebuy that exact thing again unless I just wanted a 22 pistol, because throwing a 22 pistol on your lower that has like an Atlas grip and a nice trigger is like, oh sweet, now I have a really nice 22 pistol.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I would buy that one for the practice value. I think I'd buy it like because I wanted a nice 22 pistol.
Yeah, and same with mine. I kind of came across it used at a time and a place where I could buy it, and so I did, and I was shooting a ton of single stack at that time. I don't know, like the part of me, the collector side of me that likes having an analog 1911 that I can shoot, likes it. If I were strictly looking at it as training value, I don't know. I would probably buy a 2245 Ruger or a Browning Buckmark.
Yeah. I think the pistol has the least amount of training value out of the 22 world. Just because it's so far from, even if everything is exactly the same, like the recoil impulse and everything else is so far from what you have otherwise. How are so Glock actually makes like a 22, which ironically is like the 45 or some shit. Like what's the Glock 22?
Ooh, is it the 46?
I don't know. I can't keep track anymore. There's too many damn numbers.
It's either the 44 or the 46, I would say.
Okay, if anybody is starting a firearms company right now, don't just name your guns in the succession of numbers, because it gets super confusing when the numbers are the same as calibers, but not chambered in those calibers. It's a lot, you guys. You should just don't do that. It's not good.
At the same time, this company has had 40 years of industry dominating sales and success.
Hey,
so who are we to say?
I'm more concerned with my frustration. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Screw their dominating sales and success over 40 years. What was the one in Die Hard 2? A Glock 7? Polymer gun that costs more than you make in a month.
Oh yeah.
I think it was a Glock 7, which I don't think actually. I don't think a 7 was a model number. I think they started at like 12 or something, 10, whatever it was. Oh man.
I told that to my trainer the other day, my fitness coach.
Yeah.
I was like, I got more metal in my leg than a Glock 17, and I still don't set off the metal alert at the airport.
Hell yeah.
Which is also an exaggeration.
Yeah.
It was pretty funny.
Yeah, that's solid. Yeah, I would say that like the real value I think comes in the rifle platforms for sure. And like Maxwell said, that you need a certain amount of accuracy for it to have any real value. Like in many ways, I would think that an accurate 10-22, even in a very different stock configuration, might give you more value practicing than a very inaccurate AR version of a 22, just because it's actually going to force you to create the same level of stability in your shooting positions. I'm not 100%. I'm not convinced of that argument, but I think if you had a 10-22 capable of shooting a 3/4 minute group at 100 yards and a MMP 22 that could shoot a 6-inch group at 100 yards, I feel like you might actually get more value out of the 10-22.
Well, and I think the other thing too on rifles that doesn't really occur to you until you try to do it. Practicing rifles with full power ammunition is a lot of wear and tear.
Yeah.
So you're going to wear out barrels.
Barrels are a expendable component for sure.
Bolts, bolt carriers, all that stuff. So
I have shot the barrel out of my JP rifle twice. I am on my 3rd barrel.
Yep. The only reason I haven't done that is because I'm spread across barrels.
Yeah, you're doing the same amount of shooting, maybe more, just across way more guns.
And the other thing I don't think people realize is that the guns get super hot super quick. So like if I were to try to do the same type of practice with a rifle that I do with a handgun, the gun becomes obnoxiously hot,
which also wears out the barrels faster.
But also just like I'm either not getting training value, or my training is taking much longer, or I need to have more guns, so I'm essentially like New York reloading. Yeah. Cycling through guns. So
that's actually what I do. I did a after, can't remember which match it was. Anyways, I had a bit of a moment. Oh, it was after the North Carolina match, because there was like a good amount of offhand rifle, and I was like, I feel like that skill set was slipping just a little bit. I had a couple makeup shots in places where I didn't feel like I should have had one. So I came back and I did like a good handful of like 50-yard plate racks, and I sort of experimenting like offset red dot or primary optic, and if primary optic, 1 power or 1.5 or 2 or 3. And I was kind of going back and forth and playing around with everything. And I just brought 2 rifles to the range. And I was like, I just shoot a mag full in one. I walk back, I grab the other one. I shoot a mag full in the other one. I walk back, I make some notes on whatever I learned. I shoot a mag in the first one. And I went back and forth between the 2 rifles. And even doing that, eventually I just had to like hang out and go find somebody to chat with for 15 minutes and let the rifles cool down.
Yeah.
Shooting 2 rifles.
Yeah. If you're trying to do like an hour training session or whatever, I mean, you almost need 3.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if that would be enough. No. And caveat, you need 3 rifles that are set up pretty similar.
Yeah. Cause that was one of the things, like one of my rifles is a 16-inch with that super aggressive JP comp on it. And the other one's a 14.5 with the 3-port comp on it. And they act very differently.
Yeah.
And they have different scopes on top. They act really differently when you rotate them 45 degrees and you shoot the offset dot. So the first few rounds out of each mag was just sort of like getting used to each gun.
Yep.
It was almost like, oh, I'm going to walk down there. The first plate rack is going to be getting used to this gun. Then I'm going to shoot 4 plate racks. Then I'm going to walk back and switch guns. Then the first plate rack's going to be getting used to this gun. And there's a lot of waste there.
Yeah, there's a ton of waste there. Both time, money, and it's like I say, it wouldn't until you try to do it once or twice, it doesn't really become apparent. But yeah, and same thing, like if you're going to try and practice long range, if I'm going to go out to the range facilities that I have access to do long range, okay, I'm going to practice long range for an hour. Well, guess what? That barrel's going to get super hot.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
my velocities are going to change, or my point of impact.
Yeah, you're gonna have
change,
all kinds of issues, and
and so now I need multiple long range, capable rifles. And so, in a 22 world, we already talked about the limitations of a 22.
What's the going rate of 223 right now? I'm going to do some math really quick while you're talking.
I am
not the guy to ask for that.
I'm not current.
Yep. I'm just gonna guess 40 cents.
Yeah, that
seem reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Go ahead and keep talking here.
But yeah, so limitations of a 22, but also on the flip side, we have limitations of full power. So some mix in between here. Some of what we were talking about before, like maybe we shoot some full power rifle and we mix in some 22 while it's cooling off. Maybe you bring out your fan or your leaf blower or whatever it is to help you cool off that thing. And mix and match the two, but like I don't think there is a perfect answer for getting this expertise other than do it for 30 years and just like keep good notes.
Yeah.
Like if you're trying to fast track this information and learn it, some conglomeration of all these things is what you're going to have to do.
Yep. So I just did the math on it really quick. 2,250 rounds of 22 at 40 cents a squeeze equals the cost of a JP22 upper.
Say that again.
If you shoot 2,250 rounds of 223, that is the cost of a JP22 upper.
Yep. And you didn't shoot the barrel out.
And you for sure just wasted at least a $500 barrel, if not more.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like the value is pretty apparent when you start adding like commas to things.
Yeah.
Yep.
So back to that $900 upper.
Yep.
And how it's more value than the $400 complete gun that I bought. That, oh, by the way, now the magazines are worn out because I shot all that ammo through them.
Yep. That you don't get away from that.
Yeah.
You're still shooting MP. the mags are still crap. I have a pile of mags that I finally did like a big gun sort or a big gear sort in the gear room here because I just had I had a box labeled gun parts, and you can just imagine what was in that box. And so
I think I have a similar box.
Finally I just poured everything out on the bench, and I'm like, okay, this is a recoil spring for a 1911. This is a recoil spring for a Glock. And I finally sorted it into smaller component pieces. But in that giant box of gun parts, and I'm talking like a 20-inch by 30-inch box, there were 6 22 AR mags, all had a sticker on them that says doesn't work, and the mag catch was worn off, like it radius is, and then the mag doesn't sit as high in your gun, and no longer strips around off the top. And I'm like, why do I keep these 6 mags hanging? So I finally just I
can tell you, I have a really hard time throwing one. It's like it's worn out. It's worn out. I'm on here telling you they're consumable.
Yes.
All right. They do not live forever.
Just toss them. They should not take up room in your gun safe.
I still have a hard time. I get it. I have a hard time throwing them away.
Oh yeah.
But yeah. So training with 22. A lot of times, I think it's kind of an excuse. It's kind of a feel good thing. Really, you're just kind of extending your range session and messing around. There is a lot of really solid value you can get out of it, but you got to be smart about it. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of training value to 22, but you gotta get under the surface of it a little bit to get past the training wheels phase of what it can do for you.
Indeed. Well, we are well over an hour. And we got to get up in the morning and teach a bunch of cops how to shoot more better.
Yep.
They should probably get some sleep.
We should keep those overlay cards handy. This has been on the power. Ugh. Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
We do need to nailed the outro. That's staying in. That's staying in. Why don't you try that again, Mr. Maxwell? Sign us out, buddy.
Keep those overlay cards handy. This has been on the perf, and we'll get at you next time.
See you guys.